We are learning for a full shlema from Moshe Aaron ben Leah Bela among the other Chayola Yisrael. Unfortunately, it's a grandson of Lenny's best friend, even though I thought I was Lenny's best friend, but a grandson who unfortunately lost both limbs in Gaza and needs a refuah. Moshe Aaron, put him in your tefillas, soldier. Moshe Aaron ben Leah Bela. Moshe Aaron's pretty easy to remember. Leah Bela you can work on. Okay, so we should hear B'suras Toivos, and the child and the young man should have a complete refuah. Okay, we're in the middle of a sugya, the sugya of Roichev Umanik. So we saw yesterday Machlokes whether Roichev is kaina or not. It was predicated upon a Mishnah, believe it or not, in Kalayim, where we had you're leading an animal of a shor and a chamor together, a person's leading it. That person who's leading it certainly is getting malchus for being chayrish for the shor v'chamor. What about the person sitting in the wagon? So if the person sitting in the wagon is chayiv, then sitting in the wagon is tantamount with being rochiv. So if you be chayiv malchus for sitting in the wagon, who then you be kaina rochiv. So Reb Meir said Yipata, the Chacham said Yechayev, and then Shmuel went ahead, Rav Yehuda, the Talmud, Shinana, went ahead and said in the name of Shmuel, then in fact the Chacham is the one to say you're Pater. So if that's the case, you're Pater, we can say that Roichiv is not Kaina. Guys, that's the segue into the Daf. That if you're Pater from the Malchus of Kalayim, so Roichiv is not Kaina. Roichiv is not Kaina. We begin on Ches Amid Beis, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up. Meisive. We're going to ask on Rav Yehuda again. Rav Yehuda, according to the Chacham, said Roichiv is not the Kaina. We have our Mishnah. Two people are riding on a behema or Roichiv Umanig. When they say Zeshali, Zeshali, Kulishli, I need to see a Kulishli. He's Kona. So therefore, you see that Roichiv is Kaina. From our Mishnah, how can Rabbi Yehuda say Roichiv is not Kaina? You see from our Mishnah, Roichiv is Kaina, right? Money. Elaim Reb Meir, Hash, Stam Mishnah's Reb Meir, Hashta Yoshev Kaina, Roichiv mi boy. Reb Meir said that Yoshev gets Malchus. If Yoshev gets Malchus, it must be that why he's Kaina. If Yoshev in a wagon is Kaina, certainly be sitting on the animal is Kaina. So there would be no Chiddush in telling me that Roichiv is Kaina, that our Mishnah is Reb Meir. Ella, what's the Chiddush? Lav Rabbanon. It must be the Rabbanon who argue on Reb Meir. So the Rabbanon who say that what? That Yoshev is Potter. Yet what do you see over here? Shmami no Rochiv Kana. You see a Kasha on that Kasha on Reb Yehuda. You see that Rochiv in fact is Kaina, and you said Rochiv is not Kaina. When we said, fellas, that Rochiv is not Kaina, it means if you did not do anything to cause the animal to move, you're simply sitting on the animal. If you would go ahead and kick you ride a horse, you kick your heels into the horse, yeah, and that causes the animal to move, that would be equal to Mashicha. That kind of roichiv, everyone holds this kind of. That's not the shaila. The shaila roichiv being kind if you're just simply stationary sitting on it. But if you do an action by kicking your heels into the animal, causing it to move, that's the same as mane, guys. That's the same as taking the reins and pulling the animal. So therefore, that is kind of. So our Mishnah, guys, for our Mishnah, it's another nekuda of understanding our Mishnah. When our Mishnah says roichiv umanig, they're both kaina. When is that? Dafke, if the roichiv is manik beraglav, if he causes the animal to move, right, by hitting the animal. But if he was sitting on it, it wouldn't be kaina. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, hachi kainu manig. If that's the case, he's not just stationary, but he's doing an action. So that's manig, and that's the same thing. What's the difference if you're sitting on the animal causing it to move, or taking the reins and causing it to move? Says the Gemara, Sheikavni manhig. There's two types of manig. You learn two types of manig. Ma'odetema roichiv adif. I would think so. Why are you telling me both of them? So, fellas, outside, you have a fella sitting on the animal causing it to move. You have a person off the animal causing it to move. Who would you say has a bigger kinyan in the animal? I would say the person that's sitting on the animal and causing it to move. So you might think, therefore, he's kaina. So it's very interesting. We're going 180 degrees. Initially, you're going from roichiv is not kaina to if roichiv is on the animal and causing it to move, it's even better than what? Than manig. You might think, therefore, only he's kaina and not the manig. Kamash Malon, that what? They're both equal, they cause the animal to move, and that's the Chiddush. But Einachinami, it's not a kasha on Rav Yehuda who says simply sitting stationary on an animal, just like sitting in a wagon, you'd be pata from Malchus if it's being managed by what? A shar v'chamar. Who adin, you'd be it would be kaina from a Metzia if you're sitting on the animal. Guys, you good? You're good. Toshma. Now we're going to bring a raya that Roichiv to Roichiv not being kaina. We're going to bring a raya to Rabbi Yehuda. The first one was a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're going to bring a raya to Rabbi Yehuda. Tashma. Shnayim shayim moishlim begamol umanhigim bechamar. Now it seems that there's different ways to go ahead and not that I know from this, but if you ask your local Arab, how do you go ahead and move a camel? You would take the reins and move the camel. You ask a local Arab, how would you move a donkey? You ever see guys with a donkey? They have a stick, and they prod the donkey along. They have a stick. So the way to move a camel is by being moshach with the reins. The way to move a donkey is to be manig, to go ahead and prod it along. What happens if you do the reverse? You prod the camel and you moshach the donkey. So it says the Gemara, Tashma, you have Shnaim shoyim moshchim begamel umanhigim bechamar. Oy, shoy echad moishich ve'echad manig. One is being moishich and the other one's being manig. B'mida zois kanu. This way you koina. Mashma this way and only this way, right? As we'll see. So over here it's mashma that you could be moshich the gomel and you could either or vice versa. Oy, shoy echad moishich ve'echad manig. Or it's two other people. Echad moishich ve'echad manhig. So you have one person being moishich, one person being manig, the same animal, to be kind of mefker, right? They're speaking about a metzia, and one is being moishich the animal, one's being manig the animal. The midah zois kana. This way and only this way you kind it's going to exclude something else. We'll leave this ambiguous statement for a second. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo'olam leikana achdei mashicha begamol v'hanhaga bechamar. Good. In other words, you don't have the option of doing the other. You have to be doing what is usual, pulling the camel and prodding the donkey. Kitani mias, you have what? You have what? You have an animal, you're being kind of from Hefker, and the way to be kind of the animal is either one guy is being moshech, one person is being manig. So what is not one doing? One's not riding it. So moshech manig in, how are you kind of an animal from Hefker? Either by prodding the animal or being manning the animal. Avol roichiv loy, but roichiv not. A raya to Reb Yehuda, kasha maybe on Reb Meya, that what? That you see roichiv is not koina. That roichiv is not koina. So again, there's the normal way of acquiring an animal of a gomel is by pulling it. A donkey is by prodding it. So if you found an animal of hefker, that's what you would do. If two people find it, one's moishich, one's manig, it also would work. They both would be kaina. But if mashma, but riding would not be kaina, kasha oraya to Rav Yehuda. Says loy. Hu adin dafilu rochav. When it said dafka roichiv umanig, it did not mean dafka, moishich umanig. It did not mean only those ways, right? It meant afilu rochav. Now, so what's the question? So why did you learn specifically moishich umanig? Right? Why didn't you include Rachav? Why? It's mashma, the only way is Mashach Umanig, but not Rachav. V'hodik tani, the Lashon Mashach Umanig. Lafukei ben Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Achet Hei Meshicha Begamol Ven Haga Bechamar. In other words, going over the Brisa, guys, let's go back to the bottom of Amid Beis. Shnayim shoyim moishchem begamol manhigim bechamar. Two people are doing what? They're leading a camel, or they're prodding a donkey. They're both koina. Why? Why are they both koina, guys? Because that's the norm. Now, one is doing moishich, one's doing manik. Yes, they're both koina. Rabbi Yehuda would say, let's say it's a chamor, the one being moishich would not be koina. Let's say it's a gomel, the one being manig wouldn't be koina. So when it says Moshe Chamanig over here, it's not to limit it to that versus Rachav. Rachav would also be. The reason it said those two is to oppose Rabbi Yehuda, because like Rabbi Yehuda, that's not going to work. Rabbi Yehuda says, if you're Moshe Chamanig, depending upon the animal, only one of you will acquire it. Watch. If the animal is a chamar, and normally you're manig, so like Rabbi Yehuda, the moishech would not be kaina. If it's a gomel, and normally a moishech, the manig won't be kaina. So the chachamim shita is the fuke that to tell me no matter what it is, moishech manig, you will be kaina. Rachav also you be kaina, but I wouldn't know this machlokes between fuke and Rabbi Yehuda without that lashon. Oh, says the Gemara. If that's the case, says the Gemara, even the opposite, if you do Mashicha be-chamar and manig be-gomel, you be kaina. If you're telling me they both work, guys, if you're telling me they both work by what? Like it's universal. In other words, it's lav dafka, like the chachamim, that manig is by chamor and moshech is by camel, lervinu v'lisninu, make a cholent out of the brisa. Shnayim shoyam moishchinu manhigim. Don't say shnayim shoyam moishchin begomel, manig bechamor. Just put it together. Two people who will be moishech and manig, bein begomel, bein bechamor, right? Why don't you say that? If you're telling me that it's lav dafka, moishech bechamor, right? If it's lav dafka, why didn't you go ahead and redo the brisa? Don't say Shnayim shoya moishich begamal or manig bechamar. Say it together. Shnayim shoya moishchin umanig bein begamal bein bechamar. So why didn't you say that? Says, so I tell you why we didn't say that. It'd be mashma, guys, that in every possibility you be kaina, meaning whether you're both moishich, both manig, or both one moishech, one manig and chamar, one moishech, manig and gamo. There's one possibility that it doesn't work. In other words, it could be if you're moishech in the chamar, you're not kaina. It could be if you're manig in the camel, you're not kaina. We don't know which one. If you would have said a carte blanche statement across the board, no matter what, moishech manig bein begon ben chamar, it'd be mashma any possibility, whether you're both moishech, both manig, or moishech manig. It's not true. In the case of moishech manig, there's a possibility you won't be kaina. It could be in the case of both manhigim. There is one possibility we won't be kaina. We don't know which one it is, but there's that possibility. And for the Gemara, ihachi larvinu v'sninu, learn them all together. Shnayim shoyim moishchin manhigim bein begom bein bechamar. And for the Gemara, ikechad sad leikana. There's one side of this equation that won't work. Ikar the army Mashicha bechamar. Some says it's Mashicha bechamar. Ikar the army hanhaga begamal. And there's one of them works and one of them doesn't, but we don't know which one it is. So therefore, we couldn't learn it across the board. A complex statement that it always works. But Einach Hinami Rachav would also work. You just learn Moshe Manig Keneged Rabbi Yehuda. Now, the Moisid Me Seifa. There are those who learn the same dialogue, but on the Seifa. What was the Seifa of the Brisa? The Midazu Kana. In this Mida Yakaina. What's Midazu? The Midazu meaning, if one is Moshe, one is Manig, is Kaina. Lamute Mai, what Kinyan is it coming to exclude? Lav Lamute Rochav. It's not to exclude Rochav. Dafka Moshe Manig will work, but Rochav won't. So the same kasha, meaning a proof to Rabbi Yehuda that, and the kasha on the Chachamim, that it doesn't, or Meya, doesn't work. Loi Lamute Ibcha, the opposite. That if you go ahead and you're Moshe Manig, meaning if you're Moshe by the Chamar and you're Manig by the Behemoth, the Gamal, it won't work. That's the exact same thing as Rabbi Yehuda. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? You dafka need hanhaga by chamar and dafka mashicha by a camel. So if you can tell me the zoo, it's got to be this way and not the other way. So why did you tell me the same thing as Rabbi Yehuda? It says right? The nafkamina would be that there is one side that it's not kaina. Like Rabbi Yehuda, it's never kaina. Like them, there is one side that is kaina, one side not. It's the Ami Mashiach bechamar, it's the Ami and Haga begamel. But the other one taka would work. In other words, it's a possibility that Mashiach works by both. It's a possibility that Haga works by both, but we're not sure. Okay, bottom line is, At the end of the time, from the challenge from this brisa that Rochav is not koina is not true. Rochav could be koina, and the dialogue of Mashiach and koina is lafuke Rabbi Yehuda. In the first lashon, second lashon like Rabbi Yehuda, but the same difference. Tashma. It's speaking by a Metzia. Echad Rochav Chamar, the Echad Toifis b'Meseira. So one person gets on the donkey. Why did I say donkey? Because it is a donkey, right? One person rides the donkey, gets on the donkey, gets on the donkey, and he's riding the donkey. The echad taifis b'meseira, and the other person is holding on to the reins. Now, he's not being manig the animal, guys. Rashi says he's holding the reins. If he would be manig the animal, he certainly would be kind of the animal, no question about it. Okay? So now, in the Havamina of the Gemara, the roichiv is not kicking his legs. So he's just stationary. The manig is not pulling. So basically, you have a Metzia, a chamar, that's hefker, a guy sitting on it, and a guy holding the reins. That's the case. You have a chamar, that's from hefker, a guy sitting on it, and a guy holding the reins. That's what we have. Zeh koine chamar, zeh koine meseira. This person's kind of the chamar, and the person holding the bridle, the reins, is kind of that. Shma mina, rochav kana, kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. Seems pretty obvious, right? What's the obvious answer? Hachanami b'mani b'raglov. Okay, so you know why the rochav is kind of, guys? Because he causes the Mashiach. Okay, that's the answer to the challenge. Now we've created another problem. What's the problem? So if he's the one causing it, why does the Baal Meseira get anything? After all, he's doing nothing if he's not pulling it, right? So now, in other words, now we'll analyze the problem that this teretz has caused. So regarding the challenge to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not speaking about stationary rochav, which Rabbi Yehuda was speaking about. It's speaking about causative rochav, causing it to move. Therefore, it's not a challenge. But now you're telling me the case that he's kind of, why is the Baal Meseira kind of? What's he doing? What's going on over here? Ihachi, it's speaking where what? That the Taifis is moving himself. Now, the Ihachi, let's go to Taisus, guys. Taisus Dibra Masel V'nichna Nami Rochav Meseira. Okay? Igar Sinan Ihachi, if you garis, if so, Hachi Perushai. Iyamr Bishlema Kishain Magid Baraglov. If you're telling me where he's stationary, Barachav Kani Yabehema, Mishav the toughest ba, and the Rachav is kind of the animal, simply by sitting on it. Asi Shapir, the Lekana Meseira. It makes sense why he's kaina and why he's not kaina the Meseira. The Metalton Leshayach Kinyan Shal Meseira. In other words, how do you kaina Metalton, guys? By what? Mashicha. If you're not causing it to move, so I understand why the person on the chamor is not, the roichiv is not kind of the Meseira. Ela bahagba, only if you lift it up. By Mashicha, or if you pulled it. Aval imari b'mani b'raglov, likni nami Meseira b'Mashicha sabehema. With his causing the animal to move, so he should be kind of what? The Meseira agav the animal. Iyamina mashak ve'im mezuva kind of kelim shaleh kind. Okay, we'll see. Okay, so now, the Gemara following. What was the din? The roichiv, guys, what's the din? The roichiv gets the animal, the toifis gets the Meseira. So, bishlema, you're telling me, if he was just sitting on the animal, and the chiddush is he's kind of the animal, I would understand why he's not kind of the reins. After all, he did make a kinyan in the reins. What did he do? The reins are metaltalin. He didn't make a kinyan in metaltalin. He made a kinyan on the animal. But if you're telling me he did an act of Mashicha by causing the animal to move, so why isn't he kind of the reins as well? That's the Gemara's kasha. Ihachi, if it's telling me that it's speaking where he caused the animal to move, so Nikni Nami Rachav Meseira, let the rider also acquire the reins. If he wasn't moving, I understand why he's not acquiring the reins. But if it's moving, why is he not acquiring the reins? Says Gemara, so let's redo the brisa then again. Okay, Pirish, guys, he's causing the animal to move. He's getting half of the Maasera, and the one who's holding on to it with the kinyan of Hagbah is getting the other half. Okay, again, this is what right now, based upon that challenge that he's causing the animal to move, so he has a shaykhis, the rochav has a shaykhis to the reins. So it's not like you thought that the Baal Maasera gets all the reins, he gets half the reins, and since he caused the move, he gets the other half. Now, what's the kinyan of the Baal Maasera? The kinyan of Baal Maasera one is Hagbah. Yeah? Yesterday's Gemara, guys, getting back to yesterday's Gemara, if not, it's still on the ground. So this person is picking it up, but who's picking it up for him? Fred the Gemara, Bishlema Rachav Kana the Kamag Belay Ben Das. Bishlema, the Rachav is kind of his half, because the other half is being picked up by a normal person. Elatafis b'may Seira b'may Kana, since there's no Hagbah on the second half, it's just on the animal, right? How is it possible he's koina? So it doesn't make any sense. So your reworking of the brisa doesn't explain why the other person gets the half. So the Gemara says you're right. There was no hagbah for the second person. Let's redo it again. So we're going from the person holding it getting the whole Maasera. We're going to him getting the half Maasera, and now we're going to him only getting what he's holding on to. Says the Gemara. So in other words, this person holding has nothing. Let's go through it. The one who's on the animal kicked the animal. Since he kicked the animal, he's kind of a Mashiach. Since he's kind of Mashiach, he's kind of all of the what? All of the Maasera, because he doesn't have to have Hagbah, right? He has Mashiach. The one who's holding it needs Hagbah, but he doesn't have it because the other guy didn't pick it up for him, right? He picked it up for himself. This person now, all he can be kind is what's underneath his hands. Some type of kinyan, that what's underneath your hands is yours. Says the Gemara, Haimai, Imtib Solema Hamag Mitzil Chaver Kona Chaveroi, Hani Mili, Heched the Komagbile Adaite de Chavre. Hi Adaite de Komagbe, right? And the person who picked it up, he did pick it up for him and for his friends. Pirish. This person who picked up the reins. Again, this is not in the case of Zel Makula Shali, Zel Makula Shali. We want to know what your koina. This is not a question of a chalukah. This guy's sitting on the chamor. What does he get? This guy's holding the reins. What does he get? So the person who picked up the reins, you're telling me the following. He's picking up the reins. The person who's on the chamor is going to be koina that based upon the hagbah of this guy. This guy's not getting anything, you're telling me. So if he's not getting anything, how could he go ahead and be makneh to him something? So Amar Ravashi, zeh koine chamoru beis pagi, v'zeh koine mashetafis biyadai. V'ashar loy nikna loy lezev loy lezeh. Let's go ahead and break up the bridle into three parts. Okay? You have a part, the animal, you have its, what's that called? You put the headpiece, like a CPAP machine for a chamar. For those of you who know what a CPAP machine looks like, right? Somebody's smiling over there.
What about for the young people that don't know what it is, like me?
I would go upstairs and get mine, but I don't want to disturb the share. You'll go ahead. It's on the head, and you know what? And you have the bit in the mouth, and attached to that is the reins. Good. So let's view it in three parts. The part that's attached to the head on the animal goes to the person sitting on the animal. It makes sense. It's part that's considered part of the chamar. So he's causing the chamar to move. He's causing the chamar. He's causing that part that's on the head. The part that the guy's holding off the chamar is his because it's underneath his hand. The middle part, no one's getting that. The middle part, why? Because there wasn't a hagbah for the guy on the horse, and the other guy. Okay, so neither way works. So now, Ravashi, zeh koine chamoru beis pagi. The rider is kind of the beis chamor and the part the ornament that's on the head. V'zeh koine mashetafis biyadai, and the other guy, whatever he's holding in his hands. V'ashar loy kana loy lezeh v'loy lezeh. Okay, and they're not kind of. Okay, so we reworked this brisa, guys. We went from the following, guys. We went from the Baal Chamor getting the donkey, the Baal Maasera getting the Maasera. to the Baal Chamor getting the donkey in half and the other guy getting half, to the Baal Chamor getting that and the guy getting what's in his hands, to what? To this guy getting limited to the animal, this guy what's in his hands, and then there's a middle ground that no one gets. So we reworked the whole brisa based upon the concept of once we went ahead and said that the roichiv was manig is beraglov and therefore it's a kinyan mashicha, that reset the whole apple cart. Now, Rabbi Vo is going to restore it. And according to Rabbi Vo, what's it going to be? The roichiv is kind of the animal, and the manig is kind of the reins. He's not even manig, he's holding on to it. Again, if he was manig, it would be a different din. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Vo, Amalo Olam Kidiktani. Olam is like you learned all along. That what? That the roichiv gets the animal and the Baal Maseri gets the reins. Since he's able to pull the reins and bring it towards him, since he's able to bring the reins towards him, it's considered his. Rashi says, since the one holding on to the reins is capable to pull it with force, and it would disattach from the head of the donkey, and bring it to himself. The since the Rosh of the Gavor is not on the ground, it's not on the ground, and since it's higher, he's able to bring it with one. So he wants to say that there's this kinyan that if you go ahead and you're able to go ahead and schlep it to use in one thing, it would work. So Mamela, the Rochiv is kind of why? Because he's sitting on the animal, right? And the other one is kind of why? Because he can pull it to him easily. Fred the Gemara, the Hadar Rabbi Avo Barusi. This Rabbi is Barusa. Barusa means lashon bar, outside, or Badusa means a joke. Either way, meaning it's not a good teretz. The Ilay Temahachi, if you don't tell me that it's a Badusa, you have a talus that's half on top of a karka and half on top of an amid. And some person comes along and picks it up over the karka. And then another person picks it up from the amid. In other words, if this Baal Talis, here's an amud, here's this guy, and this guy can do this easily because it's lifted like the head of the chamor. He can do this very easily, right? So let's say he doesn't do that. Another guy comes along and he picks it up. You're going to tell me that this guy's not kind? Of course he's kind. This person can bring it easily. We don't care. You see that the capability of bringing something easily to yourself is not a valid, viable kinyan. And therefore, just because you can schlep it from the top of the chamar's head, it's not a viable kinyan, right? Because again, it's this exact same case over here. The guy who's picking it up from the ground is the Baal Meseira, and on the Omid, view the Omid is the head of the chamor. And therefore, in that case, Zichra, the guy picks it up from the chamor. So therefore, the guy in the chamor should be kinder as well. So therefore, it's Elahad Ravo Barusahi, it's a Bruce, and it's not a good teretz. So therefore, we do not have another way of making the brisa work without saying that the roichiv is koine causes. In other words, if you're telling me the roichiv is koine without manig raglov, you have no problem. This reworking is all according to the mandiyama that rochav alone is not koine, because we're speaking where manig raglov. Manig raglov creates a case of mashicha. It causes it to move. Once it causes it to move, of course he's kaina. And then the shaila goes, so how does the Baal Meseira get it then? Right? How does he get it? And therefore we ended up with, it must be that there's him causing it to move, getting that, and the top that's on the animal, the person getting what's underneath his hand, and the middle ground doesn't go to either one. Pashma, Rabbi Eliezer Oymen, Roichiv Besada. The guy is going ahead, he's riding in the field, Umanig be'ir, or he's schlepping it in the city. Okay, so he's making a kinyan, and it seems that what? That in a field, you find a Metzia in the field, and you ride it, you be kaina. You be kaina. But not in the city. If you ride in the city, you would not. In the city, if you're manig it, then you're kaina. The kol came besada, you be kaina. Again, manig for sure is kaina in both places. Rochiv is only kind of where? In the field. Now, there is no one being manig him in the field, only the Rochiv. What do you see? That Rochiv is kind of. That Rochiv is kind of. Good? One more time. Tashma. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rochiv Besada, he finds a Metzia in the field and he goes up to ride the animal. And the Havamina guys, he's stationary. Umanig Be'er. He thought riding in the city is not going to help. Manig would help in the city. Kol shekem b'sadeh. Kana. Question on Rav Vat, on Rabbi Huda. What's the answer? Hachanami, manig baraglov. It's speaking where he caused the animal to move. Ihachi. Now, so now the ihachi again we're going to have to explain. If you're telling me where it's causing the animal to move, hainu manig, it says my trey gavni manig. Ihachi rochav be'er my time lekana. If he's causing the animal to move, what's the reason in the city it doesn't work? Look, let's do the bottom places, guys. Ihachi rochav be'er mami time lekana. Igar sinan ihachi hachi prushay. Iyam b'shlema loy mari b'mani b'raglov. B'shlema, you're going to telling me if he's not causing the animal to move, he's just stationary on the animal. L'kach be'er lekana. Therefore, in the city, he doesn't acquire it. That the animal is moving is not because of him. If adam shemidabrim yachad, v'yesh kama devarim be'emsa drachim. In other words, if this animal hears noise, the animal is going to move, but not machmas the rachav. It's going to move because of the people talking. It hears noise, right? So Bishleim, if you're telling me that the rachav is not doing anything, I can understand why in the city he doesn't acquire it. After all, the whole movement of Mashiach of the animal is caused by another source, by people talking. Guys, but if you're going to tell me that he's in the city and kicking the animal and causing the animal to move, why in the world is he not kaina? It's classic Mashiach. Ihachi, if you're telling me that what? That it's speaking where what he's kicking the animal, I don't understand why he's not kaina. Bishleim, if he wasn't kicking the animal, I could understand it because it's other people causing it to move, right? Says the Gemara. Ihachi, if it's speaking in the city and he's kicking his legs, it's not the derech of people to ride in the city. Take a look at the bottom Rashi. Ein darkon mishum tzniusa. Now, I'm not sure what it means tzniusa over here. It means the way they ride, it's a lack of tznius, or just als kovedik, it's not tzniusdik to ride. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's more mistabret's kovedik. Okay? Either way, even though he's kicking his legs, and even though Mashiach Pashtus would be a kinyan, this is not the norm. Kinyanim goes after what people consider. Guys, you know what the classic kinyan is? You go to the Diamond District. What's the classic kinyan? It's Tekiyas Kaf. The Diamond District, once you shake your hand, if you go back on that, you might as well close your booth. You're out of business. You're gone. You're finished. Because Tekiyas Kaf is the accepted kinyan. We saw a Gemara. Let's say you go ahead and borrow something. You borrow something. As soon as you take it, you're not necessarily chay bones until you use it. Bakabo, you take the axe and you use it. Once the usage takes place, that shafts the fact that it's in your rishus. So the same thing, a kinyan that is a transfer of bilis, right? Also is the norm, what people consider normal. So if you're in the city and you're riding a horse, if it's not normal for whatever reason, in this case, tznius, then it won't work, even though you're causing it to move. Okay. Says the Gemara, if that el me'ata, if you're telling me that's the case, if a guy picks up a wallet that's muktzah on Shabbos, it's not normal. You're going to tell me it's not kaina? The way I explained it to you now, I'm not sure exactly I understand Gemara's kasha. Or maybe my explanation is not a good explanation, which is much more mistabra. If Mashiach is a kinyan, then it should always work. Just like Hagbah is always a kinyan. I have a factor over here that it's Shabbos, and it's muktzah, and people don't do this in Shabbos. So if you tell me people don't do something, and that impacts the kinyan, so why in the world would you be kaina by picking up a wallet? And the answer is You are. So if Hagbah is a kinyan on Shabbos, then Meshicha is a kinyan in the city. You have a side factor over here. It's not sneistic to ride in the city. But you didn't tell me Meshicha is not a good kinyan. You told me it's not, it's a side point. It's not sneis to ride in the city. So 1 second, it's not normal to go ahead and pick up a wallet on Shabbos. It's muktzah. Yet if you do it, you're kaina. Who I did? If you ride in the city, you're kaina. So why does it say Rachabi, you're not kaina? So we don't understand the hezber. Bishlema, guys, if you tell me he's not kicking his feet like Taisvis brought out, and he's moving as a result of outside source, we understand quite well why he's not kaina. But now you're telling me he's a kinyan meshicha because he's kicking the animal. Why in the world is he not kaina? Gavaldi Akash. El, what do you say? My David Avid, Vikana. What he did, he shouldn't have done by Shabbos, but he acquires it. Hachanami, my David Avid. Whatever he did over here, he did. Vikana, and he acquires it. So therefore, that can't be the case of what? Of that he's kicking his legs, because that'd be problematic. Says the Gemara, okay, so now we have a problem. So the problem is, if he's manik baraglov, why is he not kind in the city? Ella was not speaking by Metzia like we thought. We thought about Mekach Memka. We're speaking about what? A sale. We're speaking about what? A sale. So now, says the Gemara, if it's speaking of Mecha Memcha, the Amalei, the Mecha of the Behema tells the Lekeach, Kana, Kiderech Shebeni Adam Kaina. Now it comes the good hesper. Acquire it like people acquire it, and since people don't acquire it, in this way, Be'ir, then you won't be Kaina. Be'ir is Shus Harabim who Amid Beis. If it's Shus Harabim where people would go ahead and ride and not, then you would be what? You would be Kaina. Then you'll be Kaina. The Adam Choshev who, and if it's Adam Choshev who always rides in the city, derech covered, even in places where people normally don't ride, not Rishus Harabim, Kaina. The Ishahi, and she's worried about what? The animal, she won't have the craft to control the animal by leading it. Kanya, she'd also be Kaina. The Inish Zila, and there's a person that's a lowlife who that he rides anyway, because again, he doesn't have a concept of tznius. That's why I said tznius is the dinner covered. Then kana, you would be kaina. So in other words, in answer to the kasha, guys, let's go back to the kasha. Back to the, you always have to go back to how do we arrive over here? We arrived over here as a question on Rabbi Yehuda. Said Rabbi Yehuda that Rochav is, we said, excuse me, I already lost. Yeah, if you're roichiv in the sada, you're kaina. You're roichiv in the sada, you're kaina. That's the kasha, right? Mashma, if you're roichiv in the city, you're not kaina. Says the Gemara, okay, no problem. It's speaking where you're kicking it, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda agrees where you cause the animal to move, you're kaina. Okay, now having answered that, similar to the previous Gemara, you're creating another problem that we have to deal with. What's the other problem? Riding in the city. Riding in the city is not kind of. 1 second, you just told me that what? You're kicking the animal. If you're kicking the animal, that's Mashiach. Of course, Mashiach is kind in the city. So we have in other words, you answered up the kasha, your challenge to that, but you caused another problem of the city. So says the Gemara, well, that's not really a problem in the city. It's speaking about that it's not normal for people to do in the city. It's not covered. Says the Gemara, it's not covered. So good may not have covered, but if it's still a good kinyan, you see that by Shabbos, it's not, even if you do it, you shouldn't do it, it works. So Suadin over here, if you do it, it should work. And Gemara, no, it doesn't work. Because we're speaking about Mekach Memka, and Mekach Memka, it's not speaking about where you're acquiring it from nowhere, you're acquiring it from somebody else. This person is being makneh to you. In other words, by Hefker, guys, it takes only one to tango. Everything's upon you. By Mekach Memka, it takes two to tango. The person who's being makna, who's selling it to you, said what? Go acquire it at the way people acquire. Since people do not go ahead and ride in a city, you didn't. It's not Mashiach. It's not the kinyan. So we thought it's a kinyan, but it doesn't work because of derech kavod. No, it's not a kinyan even. Because he told you acquire it, people acquire. Since people don't ride in the city, not acquire. Now, a side point. The Rishus Harabim, who, however, if it's in Rishus Harabim, you would be koina because people do ride there. The Adam Chashav, who and the person buying it, who rides a field in side streets, he'd also be koina. The Isha, he who doesn't lead animals because they're too strong and he's schlepper, and she wants more control by sitting on it, also kanya, because this would be normal. The Inish Zila, who is a low life koina, then you'll be koina. Boy, Rebbe Lazar. Someone says to his friend, that this V'Imishus Arabim is not going on Mekach Memka. That's going back on the original thought. Guys, I jumped. I don't want you to be misled. Guys, look at me. I don't want you to be misled. You had a kasha. If it's speaking with Yismane Beraglov, then why isn't Kohen in the city? And for the Gemara, it's not speaking about Metzia, it's speaking about Mekach Memka. The Meichu sold it to you. The Meichu sold it to you al manas on the condition that you acquire the way you're supposed to acquire it, not conditionally. And since people don't ride in the city, not acquired. Okay, that answered the kasha. We answered the kasha, we answered the digression. We answered the kasha, it's speaking with Manik Baraglov, so it's not stationary kinyan. And we answered the digression, why Be'ir is it not koina? Because it's speaking of Mekach Memker, and the Meicher said acquire it normally. Now, going back to what we said about if a person rides in the city, you're not koina, right? Let's a few addendums. One, it's on the side streets, not Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, everyone will be koina. Two, the person is a regular guy, not an Adam Chashav. Adam Chashav, he rides. Three, it's a woman. If it's a woman, she acquires it. And four, it's a low life, he'll also acquire it because he has no sense of self. So it leads the person not requirement just to a regular Joe. Okay, but it's going back explaining rather than part of the dialogue of the Kash and the Teretz. It's just an addendum to this din of Be'ir, you're not koina. Says the Gemara. Very good. Boy, Rebbe Lazar. Someone says to his friend, Mashach behemazu liknois kalim shehalecha. In other words, I'm not asking you to acquire the behema, guys, just the kalim. If you ask to acquire the animal, the kalim would come along with it. Here we're speaking about you're not acquiring the animal, you want to acquire lecha. Mahu, what's the din? Mahu liknois. What's the din? What's the din over there? We want to know what's the din over there. Let's see Rashi. Mashach behemazu al manas liknois kalim shehalecha. The Mekachu Memkar, it's speaking about a sale. He's selling him the animal, and he's not he's selling the kalim. He's selling the kalim and not the animal. Now, the Gemara asks, "Liknais mikam lakni." Liknais is mashma. You're mechavin liknais, and I'm not mechavin to give it to you. So a person, just in linguistics, the person says, "What's the din of him acquiring?" And fed the Gemara back in the Gemara, Miyamale Kni, did he say, did the Moicher tell him go acquire it? Tell Ella, just reword it. Mashach behimazu ukni kalim she'alecha. Pull this animal and acquire the kalim that are on it. Mahu. Mi mahanya mashich the behema lakmiya kalim olay. Right? Are you mekayim? In other words, you never did a mashicha on the kalim, you did a mashicha on the animal. But as a result of the mashiach on the animal, which you're not acquiring, do you acquire the kalim or not? Rashi, mi kana kalim, the mashiach de behema, ima behema the medika mavisla, meicha kalim blei behema klal. When you ask, the mavala the meicha kalim blei behema meklal, the meicha shneim pshitala the kana behema. Now, okay, so now. The Gemara is going to go into the following. Guys, look at me. Your shaila is, if you're not koine the animal, can you be koine the kalim? I have a better shaila. What happens if you are acquiring the animal? Can you be koine the kalim? As the Gemara took for granted, that for sure would work. The Gemara took for granted, that for sure would work. It for sure would work that if you koine the animal, you koine the kalim, and we're going to question that, okay? So now, says the Gemara, one more time. Boy, Rebbe Lazar, but pull this liknois to acquire, kalim but not the animal. Mahu, liknois to acquire, mi amal likni, you didn't say acquire. Liknois is mashma, it's up to the lekeach. What about the Meichen? The Meichen's got to tell him acquire. Ella, okay, let's reword it. Mashach be'em azu v'koni kelim shalau mahu. Mi mahani mashich the behema laknu kelim olay. Amarava, 1 second. I amalei kni behema v'kini kelim ikana kelim. If you would have said acquire the animal and acquire the kelim, would you acquire it? In other words, you're starting at second base. What about first base? You're starting at second base. Can you be kind of the kelim without the animal? I'm going to ask you first base. Can you be kind of the kelim with the animal? What's the problem? Guys, outside, what kinyan would you think it would be? It's not kinyan agav. Kinyan agav is where you kind of karka and you kind of kelim agav the karka. So what kinyan would it be? Meshicha, you're not being meishah the kelim, you're meishah the animal. So the kinyan would be kinyan chatzah. Kinyan chatzah, something that's in your jurisdiction. So if I pull the animal is now in my jurisdiction, automatically the kelim being in my chatzah would be kind of. Right? That ostensibly is the kinyan over here. But that's problematic, as you remember from Baba Kama and Gittin. We had all of these we had within the last 3 years. Right? We had this recently. Says the Gemara. Mikana Kalim Chatzam Alechasi. The animal is a Chatzam Aleches. The Chatzam Aleches Lekana. You might remember this guy's in the Sugi of Avodim. He had an Eved, and Eved's walking, he's got something on the Eved, but the Chayr is a Chatzam Alechas. You're going to say when it stands still, and now it's not walking, but Kol She'ena Mahalech Leikana, anything that if it walks, it has the capability of walking, not kaina, even when it stands still. In other words, anything that can walk and stops is considered walking. So it's still considered Chatzam Aleches, even if it stops to rest. So therefore, we're asking kasha in your kasha. You want to know if you're mashach behema without being kind of behena, kind of kalim. I got a bigger question. What happens even if you're kind of the animal? How can you be kind of the kalim? Kalim is in a chatzim aleches. The lachem is when the animal is tied up. The animal's tied up. If you remember, by Eved, we had to have him sleeping also, because he had to be that under someone else's jurisdiction, because it's chatzim mishnameres. It's going to be watched by himself. So he not only had to be tied up to take care of the malachas part, he had to be sleeping to take care of the chatzim mishtameres part. Just a little bekias that we had.
If the animal's tied up, then how is he make a kinyan on the animal? It's not moving.
No, he was mashach the animal, then it stopped, tied up the animal. The kalim now are you kind of the kalim al swan al chatzah. The kinyan doesn't have to take place simultaneously, Avi. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna Brev Yeshua L'Rava, Elamiyata Hayim Halach B'Svina. If you're going on a boat, the Katsu Dogim V'Naflu Techasmina Hachanami the Chatzam Alechasi V'Leikana. In other words, you're a sailor in a ship. It's a cruise ship, and comes along. They jump into the boat. Can anyone come along and take it, or does it belong to the owner of the boat? It belongs to the owner of the boat. But 1 second, isn't the chatzam alechasi? No, it's a nice question on a digression. It's the svina that is stationary. It's the water causing it to go. It's not a chatzam alechas, guys. The chatzar is stationary. It's the. Now I was thinking, what about a motorboat? What about a motorboat? Okay. So chatzam alechasi v'lekana. Amlei svina menach nachri. Amay Yehuda kamantule. Amlei Ravina Lavashi Elamiyata. You're worried about a chatzam alechas. Chatzam alechas b'shus harabim. V'zarek laget l'teicheka or l'teich kolsa. Achnami l'edin gersha. Your wife is walking in b'shus harabim. You throw her a get. It lands in her lap or in her basket. Right? You're going to say that cheka, meaning her chest. It lands on part of her, and she's walking along. You're going to tell me she's not divorced? The basket's at rest, and it's moving as a result of her. So again, the Gemara did not answer the shaila. The Gemara asked the question on a question, and it said, well, that's not a question. The Gemara remains with a question. If you go ahead and you're kind of the animal, could you be without being kind of the animal? Can you be kind of the kalim? Asking a side question, if that's the case, even if you're kind of the animal, you shouldn't be kind of the kalim because of a problem of chatzim aleches. So the halacha is, it's as long as it's not moving and incapable of moving because it's tied up, then it should be kind of. question from boat, question from woman. Both cases, the woman's basket and the boat were considered stationary. It's an outside force that's causing it to move, either the water or the woman. Okay, on that note, I bid you a good